Hello, wise ones, and welcome to the first episode of Timeless Testimonies. My dog is stretching. And we're going to talk about the first 5 to 10 years of my life. I was born on August 2nd, 1990, to two high school students. So it was kind of the same family dynamics on both sides, whereas my dad had two younger brothers, my mom had two younger brothers, single mothers. When I was born, of course I lived with my mom. I was living with my mom's side of my family, and that was, like I said, my grandmother, my mom, her two younger brothers, and my great uncle lived with us. And if I'm not mistaken, one of my cousin uncles, and I said cousin uncle because technically he's my cousin. Well, biologically he's my cousin, but technically he's my uncle because my granny adopted her sister's kids when her sister died. So my cousin uncle lived with us until they graduated, if I'm not mistaken. But then my mom, my grandma, my two uncles, we ended up moving to a neighborhood called Norfolk, and that's where my memories really start. And that was the first, I would say, first 5 to 6 years of my life. We lived in Norfolk from I think I was probably about 3 when we moved to Norfolk, so 3 to like 4, maybe. I think you're like 4 or 5 when you go to kindergarten, right? I think so, because we lived there until I went to till I was in kindergarten. And I went to Lower Elementary for kindergarten. Let's see. At that time, my grandmother, I think she worked at Central State, which is our mental health, or it's our crazy house. That's what I know as. It's where the crazy people go. The mentally unstable go there. She worked there at that time, from what I remember. And then for whatever reason, we moved out of Norfolk. Me and my mom tried to stay with a cousin, but that did not work out. That's not my story to tell, so I'm not gonna tell it, but it didn't work out. That's all I'm gonna say. So we all ended up moving into our family home. Girl. So we all moved into our family home. And that's a 3-bedroom house. Technically 4 if you add the room that we have built on. So we went from, let's see, a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom townhouse to a 3.5-ish 1-bathroom house with that's at least 7 people in this house. Because my great grandmother lived at the house, my great uncle that lived with us when I was a baby lived here, and my god grandfather, I call him that because he was technically one of my uncle's godfathers, and I just called him my granddad because he was the only granddad I knew. We all lived here. How we made that work, I don't know. When you love your family, you don't think about it. And I was a kid. I was just now starting elementary when we had to move into the family house. So yeah, that was a lot. That was a lot of people when I think about it. But around that time, it was the first time that I personally dedicated my life to God. I was probably about 6 years old. And I want to say it was like a church service. Something just told me to go up there. I wanted to dedicate my life to God. Now, again, I said I was the only person who went up there, but somehow me and all my cousins ended up getting baptized, even though I'm the one who went up there and said I want to get my life. How they got involved? It was all my great grandmother. But yeah, so I was baptized at probably like 6 years old, and that's really when the devil started coming for me. And when I say that man been on me, he been on my boots since I was 6 years old. But so I was 6 when I got baptized for the first time, and I started elementary, and like I said, it was a whole lot of people going on at this house. So my great grandmother got my mother onto Section 8, and that's when I probably was in like, I would say about like second, third grade. Me and my mom finally got our own apartment. And we lived, at the time the apartments were called Allegheny, which is like, if you know anything about my city of Louisville, Kentucky, it's on Pop Level. It used to be behind a bank. I think it's a law firm now. Anyway, it's called something. Those apartments are called something else, but when we lived there, they were called Allegheny. And it was, I'm not gonna say it was a project, but it was a hood, kind of like Norfolk. Like, there wasn't projects, but they wasn't far. They wasn't far off of projects. So that was our first apartment, and like I said, I was in probably about like 3rd, 4th grade when we finally got our own apartment, and I ended up. So at this time in my life, my dad is in my life. My dad's always been in my life, but it's always been like, how can I explain it? So I saw my dad regularly. Like, sometimes he would come get me, sometimes his mom would come get me, sometimes his brother would come get me, and I would go and spend the weekend with them sometimes, or whatever, maybe a little time in the summer. But I saw him more regularly because my grandmothers at the time were best friends. So, and my grandmother on my mother's side, me and her were besties. All my life we were besties. So, when she would go, because they were smoking partners at the time, my dad's mom still smoked cigarettes. So they smoked cigarettes and they smoked weed. So they smoked together. So, when they would have sessions, of course, I went with my granny everywhere she went. So when she went to go have sessions with my other grandmother, I was there. So I got to see him more than him just coming to get me when he wanted to. But, so my families were very close at this time. And my oldest uncle on my mom's side, which is her middle brother, and my youngest uncle on my dad's side, were best friends. And, my mom and dad got along. They wasn't together anymore, but they still got along for the sake of me and our families being close. And we were so close that, like, because my great-grandmother was, like, the family cook. So every holiday was at our family house. And my dad's family would come. And, it was very intertwined when I was young. I'll say by the time I was 8 years old, I got hit by a car. What happened was, I was with my dad. He had come to get me. I don't know if I was staying the weekend, but he came to get me. And at first we were about to cross the street together, but I forgot something in the car. So I was like, wait, I need to get whatever it was. It was probably a purse. I'll get back to the purse situation. But I went back to get my purse, and he went across the street without me. So, I came from, got whatever I got out of the car, and I was coming around, and I looked both ways. But when I looked this way, I was also running out at the same time, because when I looked this way, I saw my dad and my dad and my grandmother standing like at the steps of the porch. And then I looked this way, but I was already coming out, and I got hit by a car. and I don't really know what happened. I think I flipped up in the air and hit the ground, and I don't know. From me looking this way, I saw this lady come in the car. Then I woke up on the ground, and I jumped up and ran to my dad. I was like, "Please don't call 911," because when I was younger, I was so terrified of doctors and hospitals. I've gotten better, but I was definitely afraid of them. So I did not want to go to the hospital. I didn't even care that I just got hit by a car. I was fine. Clearly, I jumped up and ran, so I was fine in my eyes. But I don't know how long I was on the ground, because by that time everybody was outside and they had already called 911, so the ambulance was on the way. So I ran to my dad and I was like, "Please, I don't want to go to the hospital. Don't call 911. Don't make me go." So the ambulance came. They had walked me up to the porch, and at this time, while they're surveying me, I'm surveying myself. And one of my jellies had came off. One of my socks was like, I had ruffled socks, and if you know anything about ruffled socks are long. One of them was damn near ankle socks. Excuse my language. So, and it had a tar mark on it. So I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. But you know, I was answering all the questions correctly. I was fine, but somehow in the hitting, I had lost a patch of hair. My grandmother said it was probably about the size of a golf ball, so it wasn't like a large chunk, but because of that, I had to go to the hospital to make sure I didn't have a concussion. And we was in the hospital all night. They wouldn't let me sleep, so I was very much irritated at this point. All I remember is they would let me sleep, and then when we finally got to go, my dad didn't even want to carry me down to the car. He was like, "She can walk, she's fine. You're the reason I just got hit by a car, technically. And you can't even carry me to the car, and you know I'm asleep because they wouldn't let me sleep." Like, if that tells you anything, that's just the beginning. So I got hit by the car. I lost a tuck in my hair. So I didn't have a concussion. I didn't have any brain damage or anything like that. Technically, I just lost a patch of hair, and I mean, it was a scab there. So my granny had, every time that she did my hair every day, she had to put ointment on it for it to heal, and that was pretty much all that came of me getting hit by a car. So thank God it wasn't really bad. I don't have any known brain damage. Sometimes I do get a headache back there, but I'm not gonna get into that. About a year later, maybe two, I'll say a year and a half, somewhere in there, I was almost raped. I was almost raped by my godmother's brother. I was probably about like 8, 9, probably about to go be 10 years old. He was probably about like between the ages of 16 and 19, so in there. And the only reason I wasn't actually raped was because my dad walked in before he actually got to penetrate me. But for whatever reason, my dad gave me a whooping for me about to be raped. And then I remember getting a whooping, not understanding why I was getting a whooping, and then having to do a walk of shame across the street, because my godmother at the time lived across the street from my dad's family house. So I had to do a walk of shame across the street, and my grandmother and my uncles was all sitting outside on the porch. I was just one over there looking silly and sad. But my childhood wasn't all bad. Like, the highlight of my childhood for me was the holidays and weekends. Everybody coming to my our family house on my mom's side. I've always had a lot of cousins on this side. I didn't really know many of my cousins. I probably knew like maybe max 3 of my cousins on my dad's side. But I knew all of my cousins on my mom's side, because I said my great grandmother, whose house was our family house, was the main cook. So she cooked I don't want to say she cooked every Sunday at least, and every holiday, weekends at our family house was like, they kicked back pre-games, okay? Because my mom's generation, they were partiers, so they went out every weekend. So before they went out, everybody came and sat on our porch and, got drunk and, did the pre-game stuff before you go out. So that was like, that was my childhood. Like, of course, when they come in the daytime, all of us kids are like outside running in the yard, running up and down the street, doing whatever. And then, they're on the porch preparing for, planning whatever they're going to do for the night. And then by the time it get dark, we're just like playing in the grass because, we're not going up and down the street anymore. We'll just keep it, in the front yard. And they pregame. Sometimes we're in the house while they're doing it, sometimes we're not. And that was most of my childhood. Just running around with my cousins, while the grown-ups were pre-gaming. And let's see. So this is probably about the first 10 years of my life. That was the rotation. That was the rotation of it. And then by the time I was 10 is when I technically, biologically, I'm an only child. But my dad met my stepmom when I was 10 years old, and she had kids. And that's how I became a big sister, which I always wanted to be a big sister, because why not? Right? Who doesn't want, Never. But yeah, I became a big sister. With my little sister, and then next year my little brother, but that was just on my father's side. I'm still to this day an only child on my mom's side. So now I'm learning how to be a big sister, and that was different, honestly, because I was so used to everything about me, because I was the only child, I was the only grandchild, I was the only niece for a while. So, I was very spoiled. But not in a bratty kind of way, just I got everybody's attention. That's the way that I was spoiled, that I didn't have to fight for anybody's attention for a while. If I wanted somebody to spend time with me, I could get it pretty much. Undivided. So that was the first 10 years of my life. I'm trying to think if I'm missing any pivotal moments besides me getting hit by a car and almost being raped. No, those were the worst things that happened to me in my childhood, which were pretty big things, but that was the worst of my childhood. The rest of it was pretty good, pretty normal childhood. I remember I've always, because of my family, I've always been a snacker. Because anytime I went to the store, I could always get some snacks. Like I said, I was the only, so if I wanted something, I could get it. And I was always with my grandmother. So I remember us like always just riding downtown and, visiting family members and things like that. Like, and then going grocery shopping with her and my great grandmother. That was my childhood. I was my granny's sidekick. Literally. There's very few places she went without me. So yeah, that was the first 10 years of my life. Now the next decade of my life. We're gonna come back to that, but I'm gonna break down a little bit more of my family dynamic with my childhood. So at the time when I was a kid, I didn't know these things, but my uncles, the ones that I was telling you that were best friends, were gang members. Child, I didn't know. One was a blood. My uncle on my mom's side was a blood. The uncle on my dad's side was a Crip. And ironically, they were best friends. Best friends. Okay? So it wasn't It wasn't like that. It wasn't like that. All right. So they were best friends, and my uncle on my dad's side, he's the youngest uncle. He was a crap shooter, and I used to count his money. That's actually how I learned how to count. I used to count his money, like the ones at least. And I remember I did it for the longest time until one time he let me count, and I wasn't even finished, and I had got up to like 600 once, all right? And I was like, Daddy, oh my God, Uncle is rich. He got $600. Like, I was a kid, so I'm like, first of all, I counted up to 600, and second of all, that's a lot of money. So after that, my dad didn't let me count the money anymore. I'm not gonna get into that, but I couldn't count the money anymore. But one of the other things that was very pivotal. That's why I'm bringing up this situation with the gang members. There's two different things. One is on my dad's side. I remember my uncle, the one I was talking about, was a crib. He ended up getting a drop top. How? I don't know. I ain't gonna do that. But he had a drop top. And I remember one weekend he had came to get me in the drop top. So I thought I was so special in the back with the top down, riding on the highway and getting all. Like I just thought I was celebrity for real. So we ride from my house to their house, and we get there. We had stopped at McDonald's, and I got an Oreo McFlurry. I used to be gone off Oreo McFlurries, okay? And so I have ate my McFlurry. I'm sitting on the porch with me and one of my cousins, and they just out in the front yard on the porch or whatever. And my middle uncle on my dad's side was like, make me go in the house and take my Oreo McFlurry thing and throw it away. And thank God I listened, actually, because I really didn't, because he was just somebody I felt like needed to be listened to. I'm not even gonna lie, but thank God I listened, because it saved my life. So from the time me going from the front porch to the back of the house to the kitchen to throw the McFlurry away, there was a drive-by. Now granted, I didn't hear any of this. I didn't hear nothing. I didn't hear nothing. I didn't even know until I came back outside and everybody was like in disarray. And when I say there was literally a gunshot hole in the house where I was just sitting, it would have been in my head, literally. So if he would have never told me to go throw it away and I didn't listen, I wouldn't be here today. So thank God for that moment. That was the first. I mean, technically I didn't experience it, but that was the first drive-by of my life. Yeah. Unfortunately, that wasn't the last. That's why I say the first. But another pivotal moment is, now on the flip side, like I said, my other uncle is blood, and so my uncle is a Victory Park, which is a neighborhood in our city. He was a Victory Park Crip, which was actually one of the biggest gangs in the 90s, I think. I'm not sure. I don't like I said, I was a kid, so I don't really know what was all going on, but it was a lot. Obviously, there was a drive-by, but excuse me. So on the other side, in Norfolk, my uncle was in a gang. I don't know what the name of that gang was, but they was Bloods, I don't know if my Crip uncle sold drugs, but I do know that my blood uncle did, and they used to do a thing. I don't know if they did it everywhere, but I know here they used to do a thing where we called them they called them crackhead rentals. And what a crackhead rental is, sometimes when the crackhead did not have money, they would let the teenagers who are selling them crack used their car as payment. So what happened was my uncle was in one of those crackhead rentals. The crackhead wanted their car back, but he wasn't finished with the car, so they reported the car stolen. And this is the story I was told. Like I said, I was a kid at this time, so he was getting pulled over for that, but he had weed on him, and I think he had some blunt roll, or he was smoking a boy, and he refused to stop until he was finished smoking. So he took the police on a high-speed chase. He literally rode past our house. And kind of, I don't know if he waved, but he rode past my grandmother. So my grandmother's like, hey, that's my son. The police. So she joins the chase to... He ends up going to jail, obviously. So that started my journey of visiting prisons. And I will get into the next 10 years and the prison visit situations. And the next 10 years of my life is very pivotal. So I'm going to save it for another episode because it's a lot more going on in that one. If you thought this first version was a lot going on, wait till you get to the preteen and teenagers when I actually know what's going on now. But thank you guys for so much for listening. If I can say that I learned anything from things in my childhood, it was 1, say no to drugs. 2, don't join a gang. 3, the streets is not nice. 4, once you get baptized, baby, the spiritual warfare begins. 5 is that listen to people, because it could save your life. Because if I wouldn't have listened to my uncle, I wouldn't be here today. Literally just me going to throw something away saved my life. 6, cherish those childhood memories. Cherish the little things. You know, I actually been thinking about getting back to it. One of the things that I used to really love doing as a child, because we used to have a big tree in our front yard. I'll get into that later. But I used to sit under that tree. I would like get a blanket, sit under the tree, and just watch the clouds and try to like find stuff in the clouds, like animals or stuff like that. I used to love them. I've always been a sky person. I love clouds. I love stars. I've always been connected to the sky. Sky and water are my elements. Like, I don't know if sky is an element, but I love it. I love the sky. I'm just fascinated with it. But I've been called to do that. Start doing that again. So hang on to those childhood memories. Let me go back to the purse situation. So I used to carry a purse, but I didn't have, I did, but I didn't have, like, you know, the stuff that most little girls would have, like makeup and fingernail polish and stuff like that. I had that stuff, but that's not what I was focused on. I always had paper, pencils, crayons, something to write with in my purses. And I would write. Even before I really knew words, I was a writer. I'm going to show you how I used to write before I knew words. So, I would write like this. Those squiggles, those were my sentences. That's how I used to write when I was used to write as a kid. So I've always been a writer. My whole family knew if I wasn't gonna do nothing with my life, I was gonna be a writer. So just hold on to those. If I can say something to parents, when you see that your child has a knack for something like writing or drawing or something of that nature, invest into that for them, because that's a gift that they have. especially if they do it without you provoking them to do it. Like, you know what I mean? Invest in your children. What else? Also, talk to them about sex and about people not touching them in private areas. And people think that you should wait till your kids are teenagers to do that. No, most kids are actually violated, molested, raped at young ages, at these pivotal development ages between, it could be younger, but definitely between 5 and 10 is when it starts. So you start as soon as you can to inform them of, don't let people touch you in these areas, even if it's their parents, the other parent or whatever. Like, it's important. Trust me. Talk to your kids about sex and inappropriate sexual activity as soon as you can, as soon as they can comprehend. Okay. I think that's all for today. I hope, like I said, that you guys have learned something. You feel a little closer to me. That is my childhood testimony. Thank you for listening.